So you're welcome once again to this tutorial section and series on creating a basic REST API with JavaScript and Java. So previously we've worked on most of the file, the functions, and some of the routes for the getting all the record of user, get a user by ID and creating a user. So in this part, we'll be implementing the last two methods remaining, that is the updating a user by ID and deleting a user also by ID. So let's work on deleting a user function first of all. So we need to create a route for that. We use a router.delete. That is the method we want to call for this, and then the path to delete a user, we want to make it delete user by ID. So and then we'll have our express function once again right there, and this is taking in a response, a request rather, and then that is the first thing, the first variable the function is accepting, a request and a response. So let's also make this a function asynchronous too, because our service method is asynchronous. So we need to make this, because we await the result the service method is giving us. So we need to pass in our ID as part of our parameter. So we need to have the column/column ID right there. Okay, now let's grab the ID first thing first, because if you check from the service file which we have here, our deleting a user by ID, we actually need an ID, so we need to get that from our parameter variable. And if you want to pass this from the body, that's fine, but I think the parameter is one of the best place where you can pass it through. So we want to get that from request.params.id. Remember, we are using this ID here because that was the name we gave it. So if we use user ID here, then we also need to at the same time call it request.params.user ID here as well. So since we're working with just ID, you can just stick around with that and everything is fine this way. So we need to now make a request and then send the call on the user service dot delete user by ID. That was the name we gave the function, and we need to pass in the ID, which we grab right here on into our function call. And so previously we weren't having this IntelliSense when I call on the user service, was because I wasn't exporting those our services method. That was why we weren't having those IntelliSense, but I've exported them, so that is everything is now fine. And if you call on user service, take for example, if you just call on the method user file service, you get to see this method coming up, since we have it properly exported now. Okay, so that is the method for deleting a user, and then you can just go ahead and return we'll return a response.status. We deleted the record this time around. Let's give it a status of 202 maybe. We can give it we can pass a JSON message, and then JSON we can put in a message of okay, I think this method is actually supposed to return us a response, so let's just grab that here. Response, or let's call that response, since we're already working with the response as an input variable. So we just want to send back a message of the rest which we're getting from there. So that is basically it for the deleting a user by ID. Now next, let's just quickly create the update a user method, and that is the last function method we need to implement. So we can use the router.patch or .put, but I will just work for the patch. Router.patch, and then if you send a patch request to /update -user by ID. I think I should correct this part here, but I need to have an -id2 there, and then we also need to pass in our ID. So any of those methods that will actually require you to pass in some kind of ID or some kind of keys as part of your parameter, then you need to put the slash there and the colon. So we have request functions, we need a response, and then we have a function body here. We need to make this function an asynchronous function. We need to make it an asynchronous function, so we have that. And now, just like we have it here on from our user service, this function need the ID, and we also need the payload for the new record which we want to insert into our database. So first, let's grab the ID. Const ID equal request.params dot ID. So that is ID variable, and we also need to get the payload, which is from our request body. So we say const payload equal, that is coming from our request dot that is coming right away from our request body. And after that, we'll call on the method and pass these two variables we should have here, which is the ID first and then the payload. So we can have that here. We can call it let's just call it const updated user. That is not needed. Updated user equal let's await that, await user service dot yeah, here we go, update user, and then update user, we need to pass the ID first, which is the ID, and we also need to pass the payload, which is what we have here as a payload. And yeah, so once we pass in the payload, then we can just go ahead and respond, send a response, that status. We're making an update now, so it's a 202 response, making some update, and we need to pass a JSON message of whatsoever we're getting back as a updated user. So that is basically it. Now lastly, we just need to, that is all of the router handler, our path, and every of the function. You can see how very basic and easy that is. So lastly, all we need to do right now is to export our router. We use the module.export equal router. So we can just go right ahead and grab this and link it to our index file. So that is all of the controller file, the service, and all of that. So in the next tutorial, which will be the final on the Express part and JavaScript, we'll see how to link that on our router file and then do our testing using Postman, Insomnia, or you can also test that with any JavaScript library, React, or any of the front-end UI testing tools. So thank you, stick around, and see you in the next tutorial.